Early one morning, Larry was chatting with Chaz while he was waiting for Alexis to bring him some express cars. Alexis soon arrived, but she was late. "What happened to you?" asked Larry. "You're never this late." "It was that Caboose," explained Alexis. "He's been giving me trouble all morning." "Oh, come now, Alexis," teased Larry. "Don't blame the Caboose. You just can't handle freight cars properly." Chaz began chuckling, and Alexis shot him such a look, and Chaz subsided very quickly. "Well, what exactly is he doing?" Chaz said, trying to regain his composure. "He keeps making me slide to a standstill," grumbled Alexis. "It's probably just nerves," suggested Larry. "I've never known for a Caboose to be that troublesome." "Okay, Larry," Alexis said. "Well, you'll find out." And he would. Alexis handed the train over to Larry, and he continued on to South Plainsville. When he reached the steelworks, he heard brakes come on behind him, and he slowed to a stop. Sure enough, it was the Caboose. Larry began to regret teasing Alexis. "Okay, maybe it'll just be an isolated incident on this particular run," he said to himself. But the second and final straw for Larry is when he brought the train to a halt halfway up Piscataway Hill. "That's it!" snapped Larry. Larry left the Caboose at his junction and collected Evan, the Caboose that regularly worked on his branch line, and continued on to the station. Penny and Kennedy gave disapproving looks to the new Caboose. "What's wrong with you causing a train to slide to a stop in the middle of the line like that?" Penny scolded. "That's dangerous." The Caboose, whose name was Charles, responded to them. "I bring trains to a stop because I want to beat the system." "What system?" asked Kennedy. "Your passenger car, so you might understand," continued Charles. "We spend day in and day out being pushed and pulled, shoved and shunted by these engines. I hope someday that we can finally be free. I want to go out there and figure out what it's like to run without one of those puffballs and motorheads pushing us or pulling us." "You're delusional," shrieked Penny. "And also dangerous," added Kennedy. "You two are wusses," teased Charles. "I'm willing to go out there and get what I want. I don't care what you two think." Penny and Kenny then realized there was no point in talking sense into Charles. He was stuck in his ways, and that was that. Charles was stuck at Larry's junction all week. Whenever another engine wanted to use him for their train, Larry would always warn them that Charles was nothing but trouble, thwarting any chance of him getting out of the yard. "I will get back at that Larry," grumbled Charles. But Charles would never get the chance. A while ago, a field leading up to a bridge on Taylor's branch line had been washed away by a heavy storm. Lots of rock was needed to repair the line, and London Quarry had got the contract. Engines spent days puffing backwards and forwards down the coast with hoppers full of rock. On Saturday, Coletta was going to take one of the last trains. She was feeling particularly annoyed this morning, not because she had to go to the quarry. It was because the Caboose she had kept getting a hot axle, and she had to stop twice. And the third time, she had to stop at Larry's junction. "I can't keep stopping like this," Coletta grumbled. "I'm going to be late. I need another Caboose." "There's one," said her driver. Coletta looked over and saw Charles, who was waiting with a very innocent expression. "I can't take him," Coletta whispered to her driver. "He's nothing but trouble." "Well," said the driver, "we have no choice. We can't run without a Caboose." Coletta reluctantly switched her Caboose into a siding and collected Charles. "I'm warning you right now," Coletta said firmly, "not 1 ounce of trouble out of you." "Yes, Coletta. Of course, Coletta. You won't have any nonsense out of me," Charles said innocently, even though he was lying through his teeth. Coletta wanted to get the job over with, so Charles's response was good enough for her. On the branch to the quarry, there's a swing bridge. The bridge tender is notified ahead of time when there's a train coming, so he can go out onto the bridge and manually turn it. Coletta pulled into the quarry without any incident. Her conductor uncoupled the cars from Charles, and she went to go take them to get loaded. Every experienced railroader knows you can't rely simply just on air brakes to keep an unattended rail car from rolling away. That's why it's very important for the crews to set the handbrakes. The brakeman on Coletta's train was about to do just that until a quarry foreman called him over. He leapt down from the caboose to see what he wanted without setting the handbrakes. Charles obviously knew this and decided not to say anything. The quarry was on a slight downward slope, just enough for Charles to get moving. Charles, without anyone noticing, rolled out of the quarry. When he reached the open line, he began to gather speed. Yahoo! This is amazing! No silly engines controlling me! Charles was enjoying himself until he remembered something awful. Oh no, the drawbridge might be open. Charles was right. As no trains were due, the bridge tender had left the drawbridge in open position for river traffic. Charles desperately wanted to stop, but he couldn't because he had no brakeman or conductor to put on his handbrakes. Close the bridge! Close the bridge, please! Shouted Charles to the bridge tender. The bridge tender was going to at least try, but when he saw how fast the runaway caboose was coming, he decided not to risk it. Charles shut his eyes as he rolled onto the bridge and off the edge into the river. Well, he said at last, I guess it's good to get a swim in before the summer ends. A Baldwin diesel switcher soon arrived up from the main line with a crane. Charles was hauled out of the water and back on the rails and towed to safety. Miss Caldwell was waiting for him. I called your manager to tell him about the accident, and he told me what a troublemaker you are. Charles gulped. We had a long discussion and figured out the best way to punish you. Charles stared at Miss Caldwell nervously. 2 days later, Larry was passing through LC Village with a short freight train. When he arrived at the grade crossing at the center of town, he gasped. Oh my goodness. It was decided that Charles would become a temporary display at the railroad diner alongside the tracks. How long is he supposed to stay there? Larry asked Roger. Don't know, Roger replied. I was just told to bring him here and make sure he was loaded onto the display track. He wanted to go places on his own, Larry laughed. Now he can't go anywhere. Clayton felt very silly. That foolish accident and punishment gave him time to think. He decided it was best to stay still and be safe than to run away and be extremely sorry.